Hi, thank you all for joining. So this is our proposal development workshop. We go to the next slide. Today we will be discussing creating a responsive proposal. So this is number 4 in our PDW series. I'm Kyle Elliott, a proposal manager within the Knowledge Enterprise Research Development team.
And I'm Kaushik Balakrishnan. I'm the Director for Research Development and Advancement at the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. Back to you, Kyle.
So today we'll be covering how to create a responsive proposal, but what does that mean? So we'll go through and we'll look at what does the sponsor want. So that will be reading and shredding a solicitation. We'll focus on aligning your project with what the sponsor wants, along with thinking and rethinking of what you are proposing. And to do that, we'll cover some tools of the trade. So we'll go through outlining, we'll go through creating a shell document, and we'll cover a little bit on storyboarding. So if we go to the next slide, as I mentioned, this is the 4th in our proposal development workshop series, and we have the link up top. You could find our past events on Research Academy. If we go to the next one. So far in the proposal development workshop series, we've covered landscape and strategy. So that is understanding the sponsor and your research strategy. We've covered on the horizon, which is everything before the funding opportunity drops. So that is the pre-solicitation or pre-RFP phase. And in the last PDW, we covered finding funding opportunities. So identifying a funder and how your research fits to their needs.
All right. What we learned from those three are very invaluable. And if we pick each of those pieces out, what we would have come up after identifying opportunities and understanding the sponsor is to create a pitch for several projects and then finding out what could fit into a programmatic view of, let's say, my favorite is National Science Foundation. We found a directorate which has several programs and opportunities, and all of a sudden a program is now coming on soon. And you have pitched an idea to a program manager, and the program manager says, all right, you are possibly ready to write this proposal. And all of a sudden, what happens? The solicitation drops, and you have 8 to 12 weeks to the deadline. Now, what happens? Well, it can elicit one of the two response. One is where you just start typing furiously with all the ideas that you have and keep on going. Or the other one is to slow down and think about this a little bit more in terms of what the opportunity is really calling for. Do we have the right strategies here that we are thinking about, and how to create a compliant game plan? This is all of the thinking before the writing, and that's what is driving this.
Thanks. So before you crack your knuckles and get to that writing, it is important to understand exactly what the sponsor is looking for here. So all of you are world-renowned faculty, you're great at your research, but it is important to take that research and tailor it to the specific solicitation that the sponsor is putting out, because they have their own set of requirements and their own boxes that you have to check in order to win this money and be able to complete a successful research program. So we'll cover some tools today on how to do that before you get into the actual writing of the proposal. Those tools are shredding a solicitation. So that is going through and really understanding the sponsor requirements, not just from a compliance standpoint, but also how to be responsive to that sponsor. We'll then go into outlining, so creating a compliant game plan and a shell document that is really going to be your tool for success, let's say. So putting all your ideas into the correct order that the sponsor wants. And then we'll go through some storyboarding about what kind of research ideas you should be creating and loading into your shell document.
So much of this is influenced by the Nobel Prize winners. And there are others in this field who have done a lot of behavioral study. What Kahneman and Tversky developed were two systems of thinking. One is a fast, we need those intuitive systems to survive. We're driving a car, we see another car plunging towards us. That intuitive systems allows us to avoid those accidents. But on the other hand, sometimes that may not be the intuitive mental box one that we need. We may need a more deep mental box two, where we are actually thinking about these problems deeply. So this kind of a behavioral study is influencing all of the fields today, and research development is by no means an outlier here. What these three tools are all about is to slow down and think about your project and your idea and its fit to the sponsor again. Kyle.
So again, just reviewing the key takeaways because we're going to go through this fairly quickly and do some live demos for you. The first step that you want to complete is shredding the proposal solicitation. So that's pulling out key phrases and words, pulling out eligibility requirements, deadlines, identifying actions, and overall proposal compliance. So what are all the documents you will need to gather to make a successful submission to this program? Once you have that done, you'll go into outlining and overall creating a shell document. Now, this shell document should match the sponsor requirements and contain all the required sections along with the review criteria in there so you know that you're hitting every single item that the sponsor needs. From there, we'll discuss the storyboarding on the shell document. So once you have this beautiful laid out document, it's now time to plug in your ideas and how do you get the ideas that the sponsor are looking for. And we will cover that today as well. So shredding the solicitation. This is sometimes the fun part, sometimes the tedious part. So most proposal solicitations are probably closer to the 50-page range. So a pretty long document, some dry language in there too, as these could be seen almost as a contractual document. But it is very important that you sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and read through the whole thing at least one time first. So front to back, if possible, just read the entire solicitation. That will at least give you a good frame set of what the sponsor is looking for, the overall requirements of the program, and just is this program a good fit for you? From there, it is important to double check sponsor guidelines. So that are things like the eligibility, is this a limited submission opportunity or not, page limits, any key research questions. Those you should all be pulling out through this read of the solicitation. Now, some sponsors, such as the National Science Foundation, also have requirements that are found in another solicitation. So theirs is the PAPG, the Proposal and Award Preparation Guidelines, or the NIH has an SFS 424 R&R application guide. So it is important to know that while you do have one solicitation, it might refer you to a second document to pull out the required guidelines. So once you get through those, the most important is to reread the solicitation. So you read it once, yes. Now the second time you go through, this is where you're going to do the fun stuff and pull out exactly what they're looking for. So yes, we could go to the next slide. So during this part, this is where I like to shred the solicitation. So this is where I'm pulling out all the key bits and details that I will need to not only create a successful outline, but create a checklist and create a proposal plan of how I'm going to accomplish this and how I'm going to propose to this program. So some key things to know when you're shredding the solicitation is look for all the requirements. We'll go through and do a live demo in a moment, but these are things such as the due date, the eligibility, the number of PIs and co-PIs. Sometimes there's limits on that. Is this a limited submission opportunity? So is there only one or two allowed from your institution? These are all details that you would want to pull out during this shred of the solicitation. From there, you will take these details and we could use it to construct a shell document. So that is finally putting together a Word or even Google Doc if you're doing collaborative proposal, but a document that contains the correct formatting. So you're going to want to look for formatting when you're shredding this. Is it Times New Roman? Is it 11-point font, 12-point font? Are the margins 1-inch margins, half-inch margins? All these details you want to format into this shell documentation, which we'll show in just a minute. So from here, I think we could go through and do a live demo.
All right, let's do the live demo. we're going to pick on one of the solicitations that came out, and it's not due until January next year. So let's see what a solicitation looks like. I want to make sure I'm sharing the right screen. All right. Actually, this is not what I wanted to share. Two views. Second, sorry. All right. This is the solicitation that we are looking at today. This is the Ethical and Responsible Research, short named ER2. NSF always will have a solicitation number when a solicitation is released, unless you are responding to a dear colleague letter or something that was sent as a way to gather the proposal. This is now Kyle mentioned 50-page. We are very lucky here. We only have a 19-page solicitation to read through, so it should be relatively fast. Or so we'll see. You can very quickly see what is happening in this program at the high level on the first page. In this particular opportunity, only NSF is involved. Within NSF, there are directorates and programs. These are all the directorates that participate for this particular opportunity. Sometimes you will also have other agencies or even a industry partner involved in the opportunity. Their symbol will show up here and the details will come there. You can next see the deadline for this. The deadline is 2025, Jan 23rd. What does this mean for us? We'll unpack this in a few minutes. But I want to first start with what a solicitation looks and feels like. Now, here's something NSF has done you a favor. If you are familiar acutely with this program, you can just look at this part. It tells what are the revisions that have happened since the last solicitation. Gives you a quick view, but by no means lets you bypass still not reading the whole solicitation, even if you're acutely familiar, as you may have other projects and proposals you have done, and you may be intermixing some of those ideas and the requirements from those in here. There are some changes here. They are explicitly talking about what are the different types of proposals that they are inviting and what they can do here. Oh, sorry. So that basically is what is driving the things here. Let's scroll down a little bit further. You can see how I'm highlighting some things. Again, this particular program is very heavy on broadening participation. It tells you all of the different program officers that are involved in this through the different programs, through the different directorates. So you can see their contact email. If you have a one-pager typed up for this particular opportunity, you can actually email a program officer and request a meeting to further follow up what this looks like. And we'll talk about what that one pager could look like too. But the emphasis here is on understanding what are the different facets. Again, is this a limited submission? Fortunately, no. It says there are no restrictions or limit on the number of proposals per organization. Typically, if it is limited, you will see something that explicitly says here, only one per organization. If you look at the new Science Technology Center solicitation that just came out, it will say no more than 3 per institution. But there is a limit on the number of proposals a PI or a co-PI can participate in. Again, this is another reason why you want to be the first to submit and again, ask your PI and co-PIs if they are part of other opportunities or not. You want to be very clear they are either only on your proposal or one other proposal. All right, there are other things we can skip through. Again, I've highlighted what this program requires, what are we doing, etc. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and do some more detailed shredding here. The shredding here focuses on what are some of the things that we can do or we should do. All right, let's see how many times a certain phrase appears. Let's pick, what shall we pick? Let's do will. you will do XYZ. Okay. Here's 32 times the will appears on this solicitation. It says this solicitation will consider proposals of only 4 types of projects. Explicitly says what they are. Let's go pick on some other will. All right, it actually has something. You have to submit it by target date, and if you have more than 2 co-PIs, somebody didn't tell you they're going to be on a third proposal, then it may be returned to you if you're not the first 2 proposals received. This is why the deadlines become so important. It is also then telling you what else you need here. You will need to submit, if you are doing a PTR, this is one of the types of collaborative proposal, which is partnership. If it doesn't include a project management plan, your proposal will be returned without review. You never want to put so much effort where a proposal comes back without review, right? You want to know why it was selected or not. All right. Let's go down to, again, how will NSF review this? It's very explicitly mentioned here. These things guide how long things will take, what are the methods, etc. Let's pick on some other thing. The other keyword I like to search for is should do. Oops. Where is... Ooh, what did I do? Okay. Should. Should appears 25 times. And let's go up. Again, this is not a very prescriptive proposal. They want you to follow the NSF guidelines for the proposal preparation. There is typically a section in all of these that tells you how the proposal needs to be prepared. That is the section 5 here. So it is explicitly saying how you need to prepare the proposal. All right. And how you will submit it. You will submit it either via research.gov or via grants.gov. And what are the different documents? It says clearly you have to follow the PABG for guidance. PABG is the proposal guidance documents that accompanies almost all of the solicitations that NSF puts out. And it explicitly requires for this PTR, the Partnership for Transformational Research, a project management plan. Again, what are their roles, etc. Should be again comes in different spots. Now, what is also important is what things you can skip over, and that is what we must not do. Sometimes solicitations will tell explicitly what we must not do. We got lucky. It's pretty broad, right? It's not flagging you with anything here, what you must not do. All right. These are some of the key phrases. I will go back to the presentation and share some of the keywords that we like to, look at. Second. Oops. I'm not sharing the right screen, I guess. Are you able to see the presentation again?
Yes, but if you want to click presenter mode, we'll get it full screen.
Right. Are you able to see the full screen?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my computer is certainly slowing down. All right, so these are some of the key phrases that I like to search for. What must you do? What will you do? What should you do? What are you strongly required to do? Sometimes they will have the words like strongly suggested, strongly recommended to. So you want to incorporate that in your strategy of writing. So these are some of the key phrases. I'll back to you.
So if we go to the next slide, so now that we shredded the solicitation, we pulled out all this information. What must we do? What should we do? What are we strongly encouraged to do? Along with a few maybe must nots depending on the program. But what else do we need from this proposal shred? And the next steps that we'll need is take all this information and Let's do the easy stuff first. We're going to make a checklist of all the required documents, and then we'll make a shell document of how we're going to respond to this solicitation. From there, we'll also want to create a calendar. I like to plan backwards. So from the sponsor due date, about 3 or 4 days before business days, your business office will also like to review your proposal, your budget, all that good stuff. So having that as an internal deadline, and then working back from there, what kind of team meetings should we have? If you have a large team, do you need regularly occurring team meetings? Will you need graphics involved? If so, when will you have your graphics completed by? All those things you want to plan out at the first stage when you're reading that solicitation. So you truly know, okay, I have 6 weeks to put this together. What are the steps I'm going to need to get to that final submission deadline? So if we go to the next slide, let's start with the checklist. So what kind of items do you need to put on here? And I personally like to make a comprehensive checklist that covers all the documents that will need to be submitted. So what you don't want to do is get to a couple days before your deadline, go back through the solicitation and realize, oh no, I need a bio sketch. I need my current and pending. Where do I find my current and pending? All those you want to have right up front and in the beginning, ready to go on your checklist. So if we go one more slide, we'll pull up the, oh, sorry, we'll go back. So some items that you could include on the checklist would be your project summary, project narrative, your budget and budget narrative, along with those other required documents such as SF424, project management plan, letters of collaboration if they're required. So you have a checklist now. We'll go forward to the shell document, and Kaushik will do another live demo for you on how are we going to put together this Word document to respond to the solicitation.
Thank you, Kyle. Kyle mentioned the proposal checklist. Here's a detailed one. I always like to say, what is the deadline? What is the sponsor deadline? What is the issue deadline or ORSPA deadline for us? And then what is the unit deadline? Sometimes units have their own internal assessment of projects, and this is very important to know. Here's a laundry list of all the things that we need to submit to NSF in order to have a compliant submission. And it does take a village. This is why you have research administrators who work with you on making sure all of the details are covered here. Project summary and project description are two things we'll talk, elaborate about, especially with this opportunity. All right. This gives you a sense of what this checklist looks like. You know, all NSF projects require you to have a project summary, which is a one-page summative document of a project overview. What is the intellectual merit and what is the broader impact of the research? And it happens in many different ways. But what guides those documents are the project description as well. We have blown this text up so that y'all can see this for presentation. But typically, when you create a shell documentation, you want to make sure you're compliant with NSF sponsor rules, as Kyle mentioned earlier on. PAPG, for example, for this particular solicitation, you want to make sure you have a 1-inch margin. You need to have a text size, if you're using certain fonts, of either 10 or 11. So again, understanding what that looks like. But what we are driving to, typically, if the solicitation explicitly has a certain sequence of information that it has given, let us say we want to see background first, we want to see, where you're going to, what kind of resources are going to come together, what kind of training is happening, what kind of research is happening. If there is a structure that the solicitation lays out, it is best to follow that order, because your reviewer is going to read it in that way. They're going to read the solicitation first, and they are looking for those in that order. In fact, even your program officer is looking for certain things in that order. All right. In this particular case, the solicitation allows you to do an open-ended one. So they ask you to follow the PAPG. So this is how I would structure it, given what I've read about PAPG or what I know about PAPG. This is the high-level outline. I will start with the project objective, what are the background and significance that I need to give, what is the proposed work, I'll come quickly to it, and then broader impact needs to be on its own line, and then talk about that. This is the high-level outline. I have two more key headers that I want to talk about, although not explicitly mentioned in PUBG, but given the solicitation and shredding, and although I have a full 2 pages to write about project management plan, I will actually have a small section about the team, the partnerships, and the project management as a very summative half-page summary in the description itself. Finally, all NSF proposals require you to declare what kind of prior NSF support you have for either as a PI or co-PI in the past 5 years. This is very prescriptive, so I won't read any of this. All right, let's go back into some of the details. When you're outlining the shell documentation, after you're done the big headers, you then want to look at what kind of details the solicitation is calling for. For this particular thing, within a half page to 3/4 of a page, I want to set the tone for what we are going to do in this project. This is not a research paper. You want to come to the ideas fast. You want to be succinct and on point. If you have an overview figure, you want to actually put it here. We highly encourage using graphics. In fact, one of the later PDWs will talk about this. You can start your first sentence like this project examines, explores XYZ in relation to the problem, right? And you want to state the problem then and talk about how it connects. Then you have the background and the significance. What is the current state of the art? What are the gaps? Why is this proposed work timely and important? You want to, again, leverage key citations here and talk about why this is important, why this is a big problem in the field, and how you're going to solve it. And very quickly, by the end of page 2, you're talking about your proposed work. You want to get into a high level detail, and that's what the objective captures. But then, how are you going to achieve those objectives? What are those key tasks? What are those methodologies that are allowing you to drive that? If you have preliminary data within the different tasks, be clear about that. Show the work so that the reviewer feel confident that, okay, you've done some work and what you need are, and you're addressing a big gap, and you have the ability of not only critical thinking, but also the resources available to solve this problem. So you are packaging all of that in the proposed work section, showing preliminary work. In this particular instance for this solicitation, you have to talk about partnership. How are you going to show and the partnership works? What have you done in the past to tell the reviewer that this is not the first time we are working together, rather we have done some of this stuff, we are going to use this money to do XYZ. Be very clear about that. Two more things that are very important in the proposed work is to know what metrics allow you to say that, fine, we achieved success, right? When you're writing a proposal, you're defining a project, right? It's saying project description. All projects have a finite time. None of these go on forever. None of them have budgets forever, right? So within the budget and the timeline, what is the scope you're trying to accomplish, right? And what key measures allow you to know that you're successful? So you do want to talk about this and what benefits accrue, right? If your project is successful, and this is your societal and the broader impact that NSF cares deeply about. So this is how I would structure it. This is a shell documentation. Anything in color, text, highlights, all are deleted. At the end of the day, it would just be your text, your ideas that you came through from sharing the document and coming to it. However, we are not yet done. There is one more thing. We are done with outlining the proposal, but we are not yet done with planning the proposal. Once you're done shredding or creating the shell, the next step is planning the proposal. And this is where the storyboarding comes in handy. Storyboarding happens in many different facets and ways. This is one of the simplest and the fastest way to do storyboarding, is to look at what things you need to write and then do a bulletized way of, what are you going to do? What are the key activities? Just detailing them at a high level within this document. However, this is when you start thinking about how this proposal is going to be reviewed. So NSF typically has two key things they look at. One is the intellectual merit, and the second one is the broader impacts. And these three are the guiding principle. I won't read through all of this. We'll share all these documents with you. But this is generally true for all NSF proposals. The intellectual merit has to be super strong. It has to be transformative. It has to advance knowledge. And the second thing is broader impacts. There are many ways to achieve broader impacts, which we are not going into details today. However, for certain solicitations like this, you will have additional criteria. For this PTR, for example, it's saying, is your plan well formulated? Is the plan feasible? That is, again, can you achieve it in the context of the budget and the scope and the timeline that you have? How is the effectiveness of the proposed partnership? Are the activities truly transformational or are they just incremental? And again, is the plan sustainable? What happens when the funding runs out at the end of 4 years or 3 years? What are we trying to do? How will you sustain that? Right? And then you have the project management plan, right? Which is the only reason why I kept this on is to show you there is actually a very critical merit review criteria within the solicitation that demands your attention here. It actually says, does the research team have clear assigned roles? Is it well organized? And are you likely to accomplish the project goals? So there are two tricks to this trade. The first one is a RACI matrix. The RACI stands for who's responsible, who's accountable, who should I consult, and who needs to be informed for the various key tasks. And since we have partnerships and engagement, and ultimately the goal is to disseminate all this information out, do I have a plan for that? So you need to clearly detail that in the project management section. And finally, you will have risks. No project is without risk. And again, transformational activities always have risk. Have you understood the technical risks? Have you understood the other externality risks for this particular project? So this is not only just a shell documentation, but you're leveraging the shell documentation to plan your project a little more in depth. All right, let's stop with that and come back to the presentation. All right. So that was the demo for you to quickly show you what a shell and the planning within the shell looks like. However, all of these are driven by Hellmeyer's catechism. Hellmeyer was one of the early DARPA program managers, and he articulated this series of 7 questions that guide almost all projects. And if you have done the shelling and the outlining, you can actually use these questions to just do an outline of your own project if you need to, without having a shell. And that is, what are you trying to do? How is it done today? Again, we talked about the gaps and the state of the art, etc. What is new in your approach? Again, transformative parts. Who cares? Broader impacts. What are the risks and payoffs? We talked about this in the project management section. What we didn't talk about today much was about the budget itself. However, this comes in as you go deeper into the project. The overall goals of doing the shredding, the shell, and the outline here is to just at a high level plan the proposal. And then as you plan the proposal, you will get into the weeds of then writing. The goal here is not to write, just to think at a high level what would happen. You will also do some cost estimates, which we are not getting into the depths of given the time. And again, we talked about measures and metrics that allow you for success. Again, you need to set the final outcome, but you also need to have in-between milestones that allow the sponsor to know that you're going along the right plan. So the goal of doing all this, and especially on a complex project when you have multiple partners, when you have multiple stakeholders, is to drive the writing assignments and make sure you're taking the different sections and assigning it to different people to do that. And also think about the proposal management and document control. Again, the goal is to drive the proposal quality. And the quality of a proposal is dependent on this equilateral triangle, where if you put scope at the top, is it congruent with the schedule and the budget that you have? If anything changes, this is no longer an equilateral triangle, right? And even the best laid plans, and this is what you're showing your best laid plans. So you want to show this beautiful triangular approach that is all symmetric. However, when it comes to execution, things will change, and that's where the risk and all of that come into play. Kyle, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Kaushik. And so we have a few other proposal development workshops that could help you get to that optimal equilateral triangle, if you will. So just a quick review of what we've covered so far this semester. So we went through proposal development workshop number 1 was understanding the sponsor and your research strategy. Then we covered everything before the funding opportunity. So that is pre-solicitation. We've also identified the funder type and how to identify your own funding opportunities. So what is a good fit for your research? Today was the importance of tailoring your proposal to the opportunity announcement. So again, you have your own research, but how do you make it a winning and responsive proposal to what the sponsor is looking for? And coming up in the future, we'll have persuasive proposal writing. We'll also have 2 series, a part 1 and part 2 on editing your proposal. So now that you have everything in your proposal document, how do you go through and make sure that this is going to be perfect before you put it in? And then we have proposal layout and graphics and budgeting for the proposal. So the final step of that triangle. So now we'll open it up to you all. If we have any questions, we do have some time left and we'd be happy to take them.
I am going to turn off the recording in case